Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Larry Rhodes.
And I'm Faithless Forrest. And we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This show is for them and people curious about living a life free of supernatural beliefs.
Today's topic we're going to be talking about will be faith, agnosticism, and atheism.
All right, well, this is a call-in show, and while we go over a few announcements, we invite you to call in on the number on your screen and get a pen and paper. We'll give you an email address later where you can send us feedback.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville has weekly happy hours down at the Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Old City every Tuesday night, usually when the show is on and about 2 hours afterwards, so we usually go down there and join them after that. So it's every Tuesday at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria. This week we'll also have an additional meetup at Mellow Mushroom out west. That will be on Thursday, 5:30. It's happy hour, and we usually do some kind of roving every other Thursday meetup just for spice. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins standing upright on the table so you can see where we are.
All right. The activities of the Rationalists of East Tennessee coming up this month. There's a Reflections afternoon activity. It's called Communicating with Civility. It'll be March the 20th, starting at 1:30 p.m. And then in early April, we have a guest lecturer, The Bible Tells Me So, The Politics of Biblical Interpretation. There'll be a visiting speaker, Professor Christine, I believe it would be Shepherdson. Hopefully I haven't mangled her name. And that's Sunday morning, April 3rd. Please go to our websites for more information about times and locations of these activities.
Do you have out-of-town friends who might want to watch our program? This is, of course, on public access TV in Knoxville, Tennessee, but you can watch it on the web, streaming at ctvknox.org. You can see it over my head here. Just scroll down about one page, and you look for the purple window there on the screen, and before long, we'll start streaming. That's every Tuesday, 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock.
Okie doke. Well, we've got our In the News segment here, Larry, and it looks like we've got some birthday wishes.
Okay. March is the bright month for the Freethought birth anniversaries. The first one will be Douglas Adams. He's born on March 11th, 1952. Author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Never go anywhere without your towel.
And those of you who've read that will know what we're talking about. Okay, it's also a birthday for Albert Einstein. He was born on March 14th, and I've written 1779. It looks like it really should be 1879. Oh, well, I got the slide right at least. And of course, he's a famous scientist and a self-described agnostic, and we'll have more to hear from him later in the program.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, so this week I was in the post office, and standing in line, I noticed there were Mother Teresa stamps. Many in the Freethought community know of Christopher Hitchenson's condemnation of Mother Teresa for her praise of suffering and how she contributed to the suffering of the poor by campaigning against birth control. I think the post office has made a poor choice in honoring Mother Teresa this way.
I do too.
So I was also pleased to see that on sale there were stamps remembering Katharine Hepburn. Of course, they were remembering her as a skilled actress, but she's also a self-declared freethinker. And I have Larry Rhodes to thank for making me aware of that. It is on his website, digitalfreethought, is it .com?
.com. Well, .org. I have it up as either one.
Okay.
But there you'll find a picture of her and also Burt Lancaster. Some of you older viewers will remember him. And he was also a freethinker, atheist.
Okie doke. And we got one more section here on announcements. And if you haven't read it, I can launch into this.
Okay.
We want to mention that there is an essay contest for free-thinking students. The Freedom from Religion Foundation has 3 categories with scholarship prizes up to $2,000 each. So visit rf.org and navigate to the Outreach and Activities drop-down tab, and then look for the link that says Student Scholarship Essay Contest. and that'll take you to much more information. And there's more than one prize in each category, and the 2,000 is where they top out.
Some of the category, just off the top of my head, is how you came to Freethought, or what activities you have done in your school or personal life that would promote Freethought. They're mainly personal stories or anecdotes or descriptions of activities that you've done in support of the Freethought community.
All right. Well, today's topic is faith, agnosticism, and atheism. And we want to remind the viewers that we're taking calls here. And we're going to kind of divide the program roughly into 3 parts. And where are we here?
Faith, agnosticism, and atheism.
There we go.
Especially with the last two, we think that we will see little agreement on what these words mean. And this is the source of endless discussion and little advancement in understanding. But let's start with the easy one first, faith.
All right.
If faith is all you have to justify your belief, then you are admitting that you don't have a good reason. If you had a good reason, you wouldn't need faith. If faith is all the necessary to believe in God and accept any Bible as true, then it makes all the other religions as true as well, because they only require faith.
All right. Well, faith is also could be described as nothing more than voluntary gullibility.
You put aside your reason and just accept what the person is telling you without reason.
And in fact, the Bible itself says that faith is that what you know. Oh, goodness. And, of course, I can't...
Mark Twain, faith is what you know ain't so. Believing what you know ain't so.
Actually, the Bible says faith is the evidence of that which is unseen. And
right.
I'm paraphrasing at this point.
Yeah, and to me, the unseen and invisible is looks an awful lot like non-existent.
Yes. Well, and if you mean by in principle not seeable, we of course have built machines that can see in the infrared and in the ultraviolet
or air
and in radio waves, and yeah, air exists. It isn't seen exactly, but we can measure its presence with the machines
with many
that extend
different
our
types
senses.
of machines.
But if in principle it's not measurable, I think we can say it doesn't exist.
Right. Now, one of my favorite descriptions here is that faith is, a lot of Christians and other religious types will tell you that faith is just another way of knowing, in other words, of gaining knowledge. But faith really doesn't give you answers. It only stops you from asking questions. How many times have you been in a discussion with your preacher or pastor and asked them a question about it? He says, you just must have faith. And that's not an answer, but it stops you from asking questions.
And it prevents you from finding possible answers that might be out there. And that's why it's an instrument of, ignorance.
Right, exactly. Faith that cannot survive collision with the truth is not worth many regrets. Arthur C. Clarke said that. So many people I talk to say I couldn't live without my faith. But if it doesn't agree with known truth, then why are you regretting losing it? It doesn't make any sense to me. Or Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah. And he wrote a lot of great science fiction where he sometimes dealt with interesting elements of faith because he was not afraid to explore what ifs. One of my favorite collections of short stories by him is called The 9 Billion Names of God. Ever read it?
Probably have. I read so much of his, and the title sounds familiar, but remind me, what's it about?
It's short stories, but the short story with that title posits that there's this group of monks, he doesn't say exactly what, but
that are trying to record the 10 billion names of God.
And they've figured out that the reason for the existence of the universe is simply to enumerate and write down all the possible names of God with some alphabet they've devised, and they figured out that there's 9 billion of them. And this is set somewhere in the late 50s or early 60s when computerization was just happening. And the story is about the technicians who were setting up a computer and a printing system that these monks have purchased in order to finish their job. And, of course,
as soon as
they
finishes it, and everything just poofs away.
One by one, the stars, without any fuss, were going out.
Yeah.
That's how the story ends. All right, so he was definitely a free thinker. He wasn't stuck on dogma.
Friedrich Nietzsche says a casual stroll through a lunatic asylum shows you that faith does not prove anything. Obviously, those people who are in there who have some really strange ideas about reality have faith in those ideas, and of course they bump heads with reality whenever they try to express those ideas.
Yeah, yes, being not grounded in reality is a real problem, and anyone who's read the book of Revelations will have to agree that, man, that sure doesn't sound like the reality I live in. All right, well, let me grab one here.
Sure.
If you insist that everyone has faith in something, then I'll admit that my faith lies in the human ability to deal with the real world using human reason and compassion. I have faith that we are not born flawed as sinners. We are born whole, with brains capable of dealing with life's challenges, unassisted by mythology and supernatural beliefs. I know I hear you often say that's an important.
Well, I wrote that, so credits there.
All right. Well, that's great.
No, we are born whole with brains capable of dealing with life's challenges, unassisted by mythology and supernatural belief systems. This is exactly opposite from what Christianity would tell you, in that you're born flawed. You're born a dirty sinner. You've got to spend the rest of your life making up for the sins of the first humans. We are not. We're born the world's most capable mammal, the highest intellect on the planet. We have many resources that we can not only work up together, but work up as community. We have a lot going for us. And the first thing religion tells you is forget all that. Just rely on our invisible friend in the sky for everything that you want to know or learn or build. You're worth nothing. He's worth everything. How many times have you heard that from the pulpit?
As I was driving to the program today, I had the radio on, and as is my wont, I was scanning through channels, and it landed on a channel where a preacher was talking about how Jesus had scrubbed us so clean that we were now free of sin. And I wanted to, grab the radio and ask that man, well, if Jesus has scrubbed us all free of sin, no matter how bad we've done, does that mean
we're all going to heaven?
And
no questions asked,
and including the despicable people on the planet that they love to claim are maybe the atheists like Hitler. If that assertion is right, what about Hitler? And if it's only maybe belief in Jesus that saves him, is Hitler given a free pass?
Well, he doesn't need a free pass. He was a Christian. And he died of a more or less self-inflicted wound. Probably one of his lieutenants shot him, as was the usual bent at that time, in the back of the head in this bunker just before he was captured, or would have been captured. But since he was a Roman Catholic, he was probably taking last rites, or given last rites right there at the end. So he's probably in heaven. Now all the Jews,
if the Bible be true,
if the Christian Bible be true.
True.
Now all the Jews he killed, they're in hell, according to the Christian Bible, because they did not accept Jesus as the Savior. So that's your view of the world if you're accepting the truth in the Bible.
Okay. So we've been talking about faith here quite a bit. Let's see.
Yeah.
Other things we can learn about, or that faith teaches us, is that all the world's evidence tells us. Well, I guess faith doesn't tell us
this. This was Charlie Webb writing this.
That all the world's evidence tells us that whoever wrote the Bible and whoever wrote the Quran knew absolutely nothing about geography, geology, astronomy, biology, or evolution. They thought that their world was flat. The Bible says it has four corners.
Right.
And they shared the profound ignorance of the others of their time. And yet we're told to have faith that these primitive people knew more than we do, and only blind faith could swallow such a yarn. Ask yourself honestly, on what basis do you have for believing the Bible is the true word of a God, any God?
Right. You have been told from the time that you were an earliest baby that it was, But what evidence other than the word of your parents and the word of your preacher do you have to show that this is the word of the one God? Remember, throughout the world there are thousands of holy books and tens of thousands of gods. We just like some evidence. Just show us some evidence. Show us something. It's just really hard to believe when there's so many contradicting stories of people who say they have the Word of God.
And, of course, we're told that faith is the belief in the absence of evidence. I guess on that, if that's the figure of merit, we have to believe in all of those gods.
Every one of them, that's right, and everything else. Leprechauns, Bigfoot, everything else that you can think of. Anything that you can think of. Without evidence, you can believe it all. All you have to do is have faith, and you got it covered.
So I can believe in hobbits, then?
You can believe in hobbits. Why not?
All right. Well, that's great. There might be some consolation in all of this. All right.
Now,
should we move on to about agnosticism here?
Sure. Well, let me mention a couple things while we're still on faith.
On faith?
Yeah, I looked up faith in a couple of things on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
You got to have a good dictionary definition of a word if you're going to discuss it. Dictionary.com says that faith is a confidence or trust in a person or thing, faith in another's ability, belief in God or in the doctrines or teachings of God, firm faith of the pilgrims, belief that is not based on proof. He had the faith that the hypnosis would be substantiated by fact. Not necessarily true, but these are dictionary definitions. Wikipedia says, faith is a confident belief or trust in the truth or worthiness of a person, concept, or thing. Another well thought out definition, I would think.
That fits standard usage.
However, I went to Conservapedia, which has a slightly different slant on faith. Faith is a confidence or trust in the achievement of God's will. Flat and simple. Even though unseen and unexpected by non-believers. Faith embodies more than belief. Faith elevates one's being while belief is limited to Faith elevates one's being while belief is limited to a mental state or emotion. Faith implies a causal role by the believer in an outcome and overcoming of personal fear. But anyway, he goes on to some more interesting things. Faith plays a central role in overcoming addiction.
Wow.
Okay. So the groups called Secular Sobriety and Save Our Sobriety, SOS, don't work apparently, although they have had quite a list of achievements in helping their people. If you don't really want to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, where they will try to sell you some type of faith in a higher being, and of course it will eventually come out that they mean God.
If Jehovah, the God of Abraham.
That's right. If you're having trouble with alcoholism, check in on Secular Sobriety or SOS. Look those two up in the on the internet. It also says that faith is also helpful in overcoming fear, such as the fear of public speaking, appearing on TV, standing up to a bully. It's funny, what he calls faith, I would call courage.
Yeah.
Now, we already have a word for courage. Why do we need to throw in faith here?
Apparently they want to co-opt the positive thing of another word and weld it on to their otherwise empty word.
That's right. Okay. Faith is evidence of things not seen, and I can certainly believe that.
Right.
And I wouldn't believe that it's even evidence at that point. So
yes, it's self-contradictory to say evidence of things not seen.
Right.
All right, well, the subject of today's program is faith, agnosticism, and atheism. So we're going to talk.
Another reminder to call in. This is a call-in show.
Oh, that's right.
The number is there on the screen.
Yep. Please call in. If you agree with us or if you disagree with us, we'd still like to have your call. We'll try and be civil, and we ask that you do the same.
That's right.
All right. Well, the second part is agnosticism, and for this, we're going to go back to Albert Einstein. From Wikipedia, we get the following. The question of scientific determinism gave rise to questions about Einstein's position on theological determinism and whether or not he believed in God or a God. And he once said, and we've got the quote here, "You may call me an agnostic. I do not share the crusading spirit of the professional atheist, whose fever is mostly due to a painful act of liberation from fetters of religious indoctrination received in youth. I prefer an attitude of humility corresponding to the weakness of our intellectual understanding of nature and our own being. So, he wanted to be known by the word agnostic. And he did not like the word atheist.
No.
But
if we looked at the definitions of the word that they used then and now, I think the definition may have changed a little bit.
And, well, I think throughout all of its usage, there's been no consistent one. Mm-hmm. So what we see is then, by repeated attempts to by the press to present Albert Einstein as a religious man, provoked the following statement. And here we've got it. And Larry, why don't you read his quote?
It was, of course, a lie, what you read about my religious convictions. A lie which is being systematically repeated. I do not believe in personal God, and I have never denied this, but have expressed it clearly. If something is in me which can be called religious, then it is the unbounded admiration for the structure of the world, so far as our science can reveal it.
Okay.
Now, if it's a lie and it's being systematically repeated, by whom and for what purpose? And why would the people, Christians or religious people, spread a lie when they claim to have the truth? Why do they need that? You have to ask them what they hope to gain from doing this.
It raises the question, multiple questions, but it raises the question of honesty. Mm-hmm. Do you have to lie to bring people to your philosophy? Mm-hmm. And if you have to, doesn't that tell you there's maybe something wrong with it if it can't stand stand or fall on its own truth?
Even one of the founding fathers of Protestantism, I think it was Luther, said that there was the concept, and I may have the person wrong on this, but he evoked the concept of the good lie. Any lie that you use to bring someone close to Christ is well worth telling. In other words, go ahead and use it. Say the lie, bring souls to Jesus. But what he's basically doing is proposing that we break the commandments.
That's right.
It means nothing to him. Just the end justifies the means.
Wow, I was going to say, end justifies the means, but man, you're even right that if those 10 commandments are some sort of dogma,
right. Mm-hmm.
He's just blown them out. He's thrown the baby and the bathwater out altogether.
Yeah. Talking about the good lie.
Okay. Well, I wanted to comment on that section by Albert Einstein. I'm also a physicist, and I understand exactly what he means when he says, I do not believe in a personal God. He talks about the unbounded admiration for the structure of the world. That is exactly congruent with my feelings and my understanding, and I use the word atheism to describe that state of mind. To me, agnosticism implies that, I don't know enough to make a decision, and that I am almost seriously entertaining the possibility that, maybe Jehovah is real. But right here he says, I do not believe in a personal God. That rules out Jehovah. It rules out all of the other.
Any God that would be interested in the happenstance of the human race.
Yeah. And I would call that an anthrocentric deity. Mm-hmm. What it doesn't rule out is something that we could say made a universe, but
the deist God,
but is not interested in the living things within it.
Since there's no evidence for a God, you could still say that he started the universe and then was killed in the explosion, or that he started the universe and went away to start other universes, never to come back, or that he started the universe and just didn't care what happened to it. He just wanted to watch it and see it run. There's lots of different types of gods that a deist can have, just not one who's personally involved in our lives. And I would be, if I had to believe in a God, if I had to believe that there was one, it would be a deist God. Because there's no evidence to the other.
It's the only thing that's consistent with the evidence so far as we know it.
Right.
All right. Well, Einstein further went on and wrote in his book, The World as I See It, a knowledge of the existence of something we cannot penetrate, of the manifestations of the profoundest reason and the most radiant beauty, which are only accessible to our reason in their most elementary forms, It is this knowledge and this emotion that constitutes the truly religious attitude in this sense and in this sense alone. Now, so especially when he talks about the most radiant beauty only accessible to our reason. Once again, as a physicist, man, I know what he's talking about.
There was another line on the next page.
I
He said,
truncated him.
in this sense, and in this sense alone, I'm a deeply religious man.
And if we take Einstein's definition of what religious would be, then I, the atheist, am also as
Well,
he's
he's talking about
he
the
is.
awe that he feels when he sees the workings of the universe, and it is very awe-inspiring. You think about the acts of the old God. He split a body of water.
Yeah.
He burned a bush without consuming it. He
Yeah.
turned a stick to a snake. That's really nothing when you look at the awesome might of a supernova, or the potential power of a black hole, or a galaxy turning in its majesty right above our heads, or knowing the fact that our galaxy is on a collision course to the closest, biggest galaxy there is around us.
Andromeda Galaxy, about a billion years from now, we're going to merge.
Yeah. You would say, of course, if you're a religious person, that God made all that, but there's no evidence of that. There's no evidence of his existence, but there is evidence of the galaxies, and that's what we believe in, things that we can see, touch, feel, measure, no matter what kind of instruments we need to do to use that, and in the one and only life that we have.
Well, and I'd like to quote Neil Tyson at this point. He said something that I think is delightful. He said, when you're scientifically literate, the world looks very different. And that different look is the look that Einstein was using when he says he's religious.
Yeah. Does Albert Einstein use religions here to have any commonality with how the word is used by any believer of the divinity of Jesus or Thor or Mott?
No, they mean they shouldn't be the same words, and it's a confusing thing. And in fact, Richard Dawkins in God Delusion, the book you use on the table for the Atheist Society of Knoxville meetings, he finds fault with physicists who keep using the word God when what we really should be saying is the natural laws of the universe.
Einstein had a
around us.
penchant for that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a thing that gets fashionable at times. And we also have to realize that a lot of what we read from Einstein may suffer somewhat from translation, because he was not a native English speaker as well.
Yeah.
But
so many religious folk would point to the fact that he said famously, God does not play dice with the universe. Of course, he was using God as a metaphor for nature. But they would still come out and say he meant God, he believes in God, and of course that's a falsehood. We talked about that earlier. What are they trying to gain by spreading a falsehood?
All right. In particular, he addresses this in terms of what kind of God he believes in. Once again, from Wikipedia. The question of scientific... Oops, I'm repeating that part about scientific determinism. Einstein told Rabbi Herbert S. Goldstein, I assume that was a famous person at his time, I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the lawful harmony of the world, not in a God who concerns himself with the fate and doings of mankind. Once again, it's not a personal God.
Right. If anything, he was a deist, I would say, more than anything. He calls himself an agnostic. Again, I'm going to come down on this. Agnosticism has to do with knowledge. I don't know that there's God. I know there's a God. Not whether you believe in a God, but whether you know or not. An atheist doesn't believe in a God. I don't believe in a God. But I don't know that there's not one. There could be a deist God out there. There could be several in 3 other dimensions around here. I don't know it. So that makes me an agnostic atheist.
And the reason what we can say we know that that Jehovah is not real is that the book that explains the theory of what Jehovah is and does contains descriptions of the world around us which are not true.
Right. Well, in the book it said if you have faith, going back to faith, if you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could move a mountain. Well, they say lack of evidence is not evidence of lack, of absence. But I don't see mountains moving all over the place. I mean, if you had the people like who flew, had excuse me, the people who flew the planes into the towers had plenty of faith. But you think that with that kind of faith, they could have performed all kinds of supernatural acts. You don't see that. So in this case, I would think absence of evidence is evidence of absence.
Yes, and when the absence is profound, that wherever you look to try and find it, it goes away. It's ephemeral. When you try to touch it,
or
it's
is
gone.
Explained away.
Explained away.
Yeah.
Well, we've hit about the midpoint here. Why don't we jump into our mid-program break?
Okay.
This will let us do a little sponsor identification as well. In case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists, as well as from individual contributions. And we'd very much like to thank AM for her support. Her support alone has paid for nearly 2 programs. All right. You can send us feedback at the email address that we're going to put up on the screen soon. And do we have a telephone number to go with that? The telephone number, I think, will come later. But you can call us right now at the telephone number on your screen.
Right. And I'd like to remind viewers that we did start at 5 o'clock. We do now have a full hour show. If you're just now coming in at 5:30, you can start tuning in next week, and any week after that, start at 5 o'clock from 5 to 6.
Okay. Why don't you explain briefly again what the activities of the Atheist Society of Knoxville are?
Well, the Atheist Society of Knoxville meets once or twice
a week. You're a meetup
week.
group. Let's make that
right. If you go online and go to meetup.com and search for atheism in Knoxville, Tennessee, you're bound to come up with Atheist Society of Knoxville. We meet every Tuesday at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Old City, starting around 5:30. It's a happy hour. We usually go till 7:30 or 8. We do have West Knoxville meetings on every other Thursday, to be determined. It just kind of adds spice to the location, so we're not always at the same place. But if you'd like to know more about it, go to knoxvilleatheist.org or to meet up and look up atheism in Knoxville.
Okay. I'll speak a little bit about the Rationalists of East Tennessee. They have Sunday activities on the first and third Sunday of most months, where we have presentations and lively discussions. Past topics have included what every atheist should know about the Bible. That's where I learned that Jehovah once had a wife. What is art? Transhumanism. The evolutionary history of flowers. That was a fascinating discussion, topic presented by a University of Tennessee biologist. And other speakers such as rationally thinking about climate change. About once a month we get together for a book club. Past books we have read have included, well, The God Delusion, The American Age of Unreason, The Virtue of Selfishness, that's an Ayn Rand book, Whither Socialism, that's by Joseph Stiglitz, I think his name is pronounced, and Your Inner Fish. A great book on evolutionary biology, and a nice example of how evolution as a science is predictive, and it tells people how to look for rocks of particular ages that will then show you transitional forms, the transitional forms that so many theists just can't seem to see.
Just a note on that is every fossil is a transitional form. You and I are transitional forms. Everything's in a constant state of change. That's all really that evolution tries to explain is the change of genes in a gene pool over time.
And an important fact that we are all related through common descent.
Right. It does not try to explain the beginnings of life or the universe, as so many apologists try to tell you that it's supposed to.
Christian apologists,
yes.
Yeah. Well, and then quarterly the Rationalists have get-togethers where we have some food and fun, maybe in the summer some swimming, and
picnics.
Yep, and not too long ago we had a lovely get-together where we were visited by this culinary treat. Some of you, the viewers, might recognize this as the flying spaghetti monster. His noodly greatness visited us, and I must say that he is far tastier than any dry cracker that you might get at a competing religion. All right, and we invite you to write into a recipe for these flying spaghetti monster treats. We'll put it up here briefly. And if you write into the email address, freethoughtforum@yahoo.com, we'll be glad to email the instructions for flying spaghetti monster treats to you. Okay. The Rationalists of East Tennessee also host Camp Quest of the Smokies. This is a fun science summer school adventure.
Religion-free for kids.
There we go. Yes, it's meant to compete
Religion-free, not free.
It's meant to compete with Vacation Bible Study. All right, and you can see the website on the
we need to place
the email
higher,
there.
Like.
Yeah, and you can certainly find it off of the Rationalist site. Well, we've got our first caller today, and hello, caller. Thank you for calling Freethought Forum. I'm Faithless Forrest.
I'm Larry Rhodes. Can we answer a question or a comment for you?
Hello, yes. Please give us your name or a nickname.
Yes, sir. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, now
and
we can.
You're on air.
John.
Please pay attention to the phone only. There's a lag between the TV and the phone.
If you listen to your television, it will be confusing because of a second delay. Okay, please mute your television.
All right, sir. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes.
Can you hear me now, sir?
We
Yes,
are hearing you. You must turn off your
right, sir.
television and listen to the phone
Just listen to the phone.
because of the delay.
All right, sir. My TV's off.
Okay, great.
Good.
Yeah, because of the delay, it makes it impossible to have a conversation. So I'm Faithless Forrest. Could you give us a name or a nickname and then give us a question or an observation?
Well, I have a question for the two gentlemen on the board. You said you didn't believe in God, and you said that you don't believe in faith. Well, after death, where do you think we go, and what happens after death?
May I?
Sure.
Okay. There has never been demonstrated that there is a life after death. It's never been demonstrated that we have a soul, that anything of us lives on after the brain dies. There's no reason to believe that there's a heaven or hell. It's a concept that is in an old book, a 2,000-year-old book that you have been told all your life, and your parents and their parents and their parents, that is real. But we see no evidence for that.
And caller, we didn't get a name for you, so it's hard to address you, but could you tell us why you think there's some continuation after death?
Well, because, gentlemen, beside yourself, you have your right to believe and feel the way you do.
Thank you.
I respect that. But I myself, I do believe in God, and I believe in Jesus Christ.
Many do.
I believe there's a heaven, and I believe there's a hell.
Okay.
To explain it to you exactly how I believe, I can feel it in my heart and in my soul. I know that for a fact. And I'm not showing any disrespect to you, gentlemen, and your thoughts or the way that
well,
you think.
You're certainly not alone there, but we're at a point where, I was raised Christian myself. Lee hasn't been there. But I was raised a Christian, but when I got to college and after the Navy, I realized that there are a lot of religions out there. And all of them claim to have the Word of God, and all of them conflict with each other. How can that be?
Well, sir, I'm not that. All I know, I read the King James Version. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that those other people are wrong in their belief.
Why are there more than one version of the God's Word?
Yes, sir. There's more than one version.
No, why? That's my question. Why?
Yeah, think about
that. I can't answer.
Well, that's what we did. We questioned the things that were being told to us over and over again by different sources that were contradicting each other, and we just came to the conclusion that there's nothing to support that type of belief.
I see, sir.
There's an awful lot of fear that your preacher will try to throw at you in case you start questioning And he will say, well, if you question, God's going to throw you into hell. And that's an awful hard thing to face if you've been taught that hell is real all your life. It's just, it's one of the things that most people deal the hardest with. They can't get away from that fear.
Yes, sir.
Caller, I want to thank you, though, for calling in and speaking to us, because it shows your humanity and your concern. You're trying to share with us something that you think is, your worldview, and about something you think is important, not only to you, but that you think should be important to us.
Right.
We want to explain we're motivated by the very same feeling, and that is a feeling we believe is typical of humanity and human beings of all kinds, no matter what their belief system. So, that's my point is that we recognize you doing something, going out of your way today to be helpful to us, that we want to thank. In reality, we think that shows that you're actually more kind, more thoughtful, more humane than the God of the Bible. Because if the Bible be true, the vast majority of human beings that have ever been born are going to go to hell and not to heaven, because the vast majority are not believers in Christ.
And the vast majority of people who interacted with that God suffered for it. I mean, he was not a good guy.
Go on.
Sir, I believe that, to each his own. That's what makes America beautiful. I mean, that's what I fought for myself as a Marine.
I was in the Navy.
For you to have the right to say what you want to say and believe the way you want to, and that I have the right. But you cannot, there's no way that I will compare myself to my Father God. I'm nowhere near as him. It's what I feel. It's what I feel in my heart, gentlemen. I feel this in my heart. Maybe you feel the same in your heart about your form. I'm not, who am I to criticize?
Okay.
All right.
Well, we appreciate your candor.
I appreciate you people letting me come on, you folks letting me be with you. And I wish you the best in your endeavors.
All right, thank you much. We're here every Tuesday, and we want to wish you a good spring day. Thank you.
Same to you, gentlemen. Thank you.
All right. Well, we hope some other people will call in.
Lines are free now.
And speak to us.
We do only have one line.
That's right.
So it's free.
And we've got about a little more than 15 minutes left. We're speaking today about faith, agnosticism, and atheism.
Okay. We haven't really got to atheism, but we're not quite there yet. I don't believe, are we?
And in fact, I've got a lot less material written about atheism, because agnosticism often is used by people who I keep contending that the description, the word really should be atheism.
They don't want to accept the word atheism because it's been painted with such a black brush for the millennia preceding this age. They'd have to accept an awful lot of the tarring and feathering of the word that's been done by the church over the last 2,000 years. And so
in fact, the Bible itself, I believe it's in Psalms, it says that only the fool
says in his heart that there is no God.
There is no God. So the Holy Book itself begins the name-calling war. Let's see. I've closed this, and I've lost where we were when we were talking about Einstein. There's a section here on his various beliefs, and
you said here that you think that, in fact, that most of Einstein's views would be characterized as atheist, not agnostic.
Yes.
Since I believe that most people think the word agnostic implies that agnostic might hold out the possibility that it is Jehovah, which is real. And I'm certain that Einstein would say Jehovah is a myth.
Yes. So that's a point I've kept driving home all the time. The Wikipedia article talks about Einstein distinguishing three types of religious beliefs. The first of which is a poor understanding of causality causes fear and the fearful invent supernatural beings. Often there's the talk about, well, fear of death. What do we think is going to happen to us when we die? I believe that what's going to happen to me when I die is that, let's say about 3 to 10 minutes after my heart stopped beating, the chemistry in my brain will be irreversibly changed, and I will never regain consciousness again. Let's see, he also says, the desire for love and support creates a social and moral need for a supreme being. So this addresses the very human characteristic that we are social creatures. We like interacting with our fellow human beings. That's why people go to the Atheist Society of Knoxville to share food and drink. That's why people go.
Right. You don't have to have religion for something like that. I've always said that you can take the good of religion, the social aspect, the pomp and ceremony, if you like, the music, whatever you like. Take the good out of religion and leave the bad. There's no reason to keep the religion in the same bottle it's been in for 2,000 years. Change it, take it. How many times have you seen new religions start off to the side of the old ones? The old ones just need to go away, and the new ones need to celebrate human life.
Reality-based.
Reality-based, exactly.
All right. So those were two aspects, and then Einstein talks about a third style of religion, and this is a partial quote. The individual feels the sublimity and marvelous order which reveal themselves in nature, and he wants to experience the universe as a single significant whole. That's interesting about single significant whole. What science does is it shows us that relatively simple and relatively few principles results in the complex variety of experiences around us. And there's this concept of what physicists are trying to do called looking for a
grand unified theory
of everything, where you have, in a sense, a simple description, the details of how things interact, the details of which are all the universe. We can summarize that now. It's not a single theory, but it works kind of like this. There is gravitational interaction on all massive objects. That's one force, gravity. There is electromagnetic force, and electromagnetic is the generalized form. There's something called the weak nuclear force, which I believe binds the particles within the nucleus together. It's what binds things to make protons and neutrons. And then there's the strong nuclear force, and that binds protons to neutrons. I may have those two last ones interchanged.
Strong and weak forces.
It's always confusing, and I know I've seen contradictory explanations of them. There appears to be one kind of mass. Wherever there's energy, there's mass. Mass resists acceleration. So in that complex set of sentences, I have approximately described all the universe, but we do know that it's incomplete. There appears to be something that we, for lack of a better description, call dark energy and dark matter.
And the God particle,
which
we haven't found yet.
The God particle, that's another example of what Dawkins says, physicists using that God term in a confusing way. There's thought to be a particle which is responsible for interacting between objects that have mass that creates this phenomena where for massive objects there's a resistance to acceleration.
Right, which is the whole purpose behind the CERN
the accelerator. It is one of the principal things that they believe that they'll be able to detect with it. If the standard model, such as we worked it out with, insufficient information is correct. All right. Well, let's touch on Katharine Hepburn.
Okay.
We've spoken a lot about Einstein, but earlier we mentioned the Katharine Hepburn stamp. Well, Katharine Hepburn leads us into atheism. She said in 1991, "I am an atheist, and that's it. I believe there's nothing we can know except that we should be kind to each other and do what we can for other people." That's interesting. She said, "I believe there's nothing we could know." isn't really that agnosticism.
That's agnosticism. Mm-hmm.
And yet she was using the word atheism. And I think,
she can use either one. I mean, she can make her sentences anything she wants. But she said out and out that she's an atheist. And then she says, I believe there's nothing we can know, which is kind of tying up the two terms, so that she's not shy about saying that she's an atheist. A lot of people don't know that Charlie Chaplin was an atheist. And he put it something like this. He said, I prefer the word atheist. It's non-pandering. It cuts right to the meaning of how I believe.
Perhaps it means that it's more truthful. There's no opportunity for misunderstanding.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Whereas we certainly see that with Albert Einstein's use of the word agnostic, that we've got some misunderstanding.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But the way Katharine Hepburn said it, I'm an atheist, people aren't going to take that and twist it and say, oh, well, she believes in Jehovah then.
No. Mm-hmm.
Whereas,
now, we've got about 8 minutes left in the show. Still have time for another call if you want to give us a call. 215-2288.
All right. So I guess I hope that if nothing else, what we've done on this show is we've hammered on this ambiguity between what atheism means to many people and might cause people who use that term to consider more deeply if it is appropriate and really describes also without the possibility of misunderstanding what it is they think they believe.
If people say that I'm an agnostic because I don't know if there's a God or not, I just immediately say, well, what do you believe? And that cuts to the meat of the matter and whether you're an atheist or not.
All right. Well, Bertrand Russell wrote extensively about what is an agnostic. And he says, an agnostic thinks it's impossible to know the truth in matters such as God and the future life, which Christianity and other religions are concerned.
Right.
I guess he means an afterlife.
And he is talking about knowledge. He used the word know in a sentence.
And then he says, or if it's not impossible, it's at least impossible at the present time, meaning with the limited state of scientific knowledge and evidence that we have when he wrote this. He lived a long life, and I think, I know he was writing actively on this subject in his 30s, which would have been early in this century. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they asked him the question, are agnostics atheists? And he answers, no. An atheist, like a Christian, holds that we can know whether or not there's a God. The Christian holds that we can know that there is a God, and the atheist that we can know there is not. So again, he's deviating from what I would call a true definition of what agnostic and an atheist is, because he keeps throwing the word know, K-N-O-W, around to define whether it's an atheist or not.
Okay, and Larry, we've got another call.
Okay. Welcome to Freethought Forum. Larry, can we have a question or a comment and a name or a nickname?
Hello, caller. Please turn off your
TV.
television because the delay will make it impossible for you to speak with us.
Yeah, just
please
pay attention.
mute your television and speak to us on the phone.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Faithless Forrest. Can we quick get a name or a nickname so that we know how to address you?
Geraldine, nickname Jerry.
Okay. Welcome, Jerry. Do you have a question or a comment?
Yes. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience.
Okay.
I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic schools and believed because I was told to believe.
Right.
I had no experience myself with any prayers ever being answered that I prayed and all of that. When I got about 21, I dropped it all and became, by choice, an agnostic because I felt that it was impossible to know whether there was a God or not. So to me, the agnostic thing said, I neither believe nor disbelieve. Show me something. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. But then, about 7 or 8 years later, I went through a very bad depression. I lived in a building with other, like, older college students, 28 and that, and we had all talked about it. We all thought it was all a fairy tale. And so then I was going to commit suicide and couldn't wait to do it.
Why?
Could not wait.
Why?
But why? This life is the only one you've got.
Why would you want to throw it away?
Yeah.
Because I didn't think it was that great, and to this day, and that was like 30, 40 years ago, I still don't think it's that great.
Because of the depression.
Okay. I must admit, I briefly forgot that you had mentioned depression, and
I went to the bottom of that ladder into despair, where you see no light at all.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I was going to commit suicide, and I had it all planned out. My letters written, what I wanted done with my children. I had 2 children, aged 5 and 6, and I thought that they would be better off with me gone. I thought the whole world would be better off with me out of it. And so then this guy that lived in my building, whom I had talked with before about faith and religion all being just a thing for the masses, you know. And so he happened to come by this Sunday night when I was at the deepest point. I didn't tell him or anything, but he started talking about God, and I was wondering why, and it was making me sick. And I've noticed that it often makes atheists sick, because even though I was an agnostic, in reality, I was an atheist. And so that talk of God was making me physically sick.
I don't understand. I'd just like to interrupt you just for a second to let you know we only have 2 minutes left. Can you...
Yeah, I'm almost done.
Okay.
Sure.
And so so he said that it would be, he had been with a girl to a revival out in the country that weekend, and that's why he was coming back talking this stuff. He said, you know, it would be nice, though. I said, what would be? He said, to turn it all over to somebody else. I said, yeah, that'd be real nice if there was anybody out there to turn it over to.
Yep.
And I wasn't laughing. And he left. Well, when I went to bed that night, that was running through my mind. And I was thinking, too bad there isn't a God. Maybe there would be a reason to live. And right then, this little voice sounded kind of like me. I don't really know, but it was like the angels. You know, you had the one on one side and the other one on the other.
Sure. Geraldine, we got 30 seconds, actually, because we need to sign off. So give us a quick summary. We'll respond real quickly.
So I gave my life to God. Within 2 weeks, he had shined a light, or he or they. It was an impression. They shined a light out of the sky, which grew every day. It thrilled me no end. They were telling me, hey, this life is not all there is.
Can we respond now, please, ma'am?
Thank you, Geraldine. We need to be signing off. Thanks for calling. Please call next week, too. We can talk further.
Call earlier.
Yeah. We do have some important cleanup to do.
First of all, like I said, that was an anecdotal story. And it may be true, may not be true, we don't know, but that's, again, not evidence of God.
Sure enough. Okay, this has been Freethought Forum, a program of the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. You can contact Freethought Forum at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com. Please send us an email. We can get you that recipe for the Flying Spaghetti Monster treats. You can also call into the station and get back copies of this program. We got about 10 minutes left. I'm Faithless Forrest.
I'm Larry Rhodes.
We want to thank Jonas and Sam for being our technical people and wish everyone a happy spring. This has been